on the struggle bus this morning a little bit. Yesterday,
Oh,
I hit my first ever hole in one, and
oh man.
we just got hammered.
You probably a little lighter in the wallet too, huh?
Yeah. Man, 160 yard, 8 iron, first one ever. And yeah, what an experience.
Did it go straight in and back in? You roll it in?
So this pin was in an insane spot at the back of the green, right over this hill. And I hit it straight into the hill, and then it just started tracking, and then all of a sudden disappeared. It was just amazing.
That's fantastic.
Well, I guess we can go ahead and get started. Welcome again to the Money Buys Freedom podcast. Actually, I have both reoccurring guests. So I actually really like that we kind of got y'all two together because y'all are almost the exact opposite, but you're in the same exact field. It's like Travis is just starting out. Tim's been in it for a long time. Travis is in multiple locations. Tim is in one location. So I guess just I've always kind of curious, like, why did y'all originally get into short-term rental? Like, what made you decide, like, hey, this is the best bet to do?
Go first, Travis?
Yeah, go for it.
I was born into it.
Yeah, that'll do it.
I tried to fight it like nobody's business. I have a master's degree in journalism, and I was a sports broadcaster. Worked for NBC Sports. We traveled around the country covering sporting events. And the siren song home called. And that was 30-some years ago, and here I am still. But I do write a mean letter.
So was it your dad that started it before, or was it your dad's dad?
Yeah, my dad moved us here back in the 60s when I was a child, and he was one of the original realtors on the Outer Banks, and I'm still doing it.
Oh, wow. Huh.
Yeah.
What about you, Travis?
Broadcaster, Tim, I feel like you have that broadcaster voice. Like you have that like nice
Yeah, I agree
voice.
too.
Yeah, for me, it was really, I just found out about real estate investing, had my first house hack, and what I was trying to do and figure out was how do I work myself out of the W-2 as quickly as possible from a cash flow standpoint. So for me, when I started diving into real estate investing, what I was able to find was if you want cash flow on steroids, looking into short-term rental investing specifically was probably a good idea. And at that time, I was also living in Orlando. And when I was doing research, and this was in 2017, 2018, when I was doing research on the top short-term rental destination locations to own properties and be a short-term rental investor specifically in, that's when Kissimmee popped up, which is right around Disney World. Kissimmee, Davenport area popped up as two of the top 10 markets. And because at that point I was also I was also scared to invest out of state, scared to invest in an area where I wasn't living because this was a 30-minute drive from my house in Winter Garden. I was like, this is a perfect opportunity to buy my first short-term rental property. And it was also going to be a property that was within driving distance. So at that point, I was under the assumption that I had to be there. And in case something happened, I needed to be the one that was within driving distance to go fix the problem. So that's how I ended up getting into short-term rentals and how I ended up getting into Orlando.
All right, go ahead.
Cool. I'm sorry. I just want to follow up on that, Tyler. Travis, that's such a great story, and you're so spot on because the last couple of years, particularly with the whole Airbnb thing, have been made to make it sound as though it's so easy. Just buy one and you get all these rentals and everything.
Yeah.
Calls, the leak, or the toilet was clogged, or the guy that can't get in got the code, and you really have to get your comfort level before you expand, right?
Oh, 100%.
Interesting. So for Tim, did you inherit any properties from your dad, or is like, okay, you had to start off. Yeah, that's right. You had to start off with like sales. He made you start from the bottom, right?
Yeah, you remember that story. My dad actually passed when I was still a teenager. My mom was the matriarch, and when I came back, she said, well, first thing you're going to do is sell real estate for 2 years. And so I had to go learn how to live off a commission check and do the whole 1099 thing, Travis, back to you were talking about the W-2. And so I really learned how to run myself as a business when I was in real estate sales. And I think a lot of you listeners can identify with that.
Yeah.
Have a plan. Somebody shared a little meme with me the other day. It said, "Goals without a plan is a wish." And that's where I learned it right off. You got to pay yourself. You got to get your expenses. You got to get your income, and it was great discipline for when I did my own business.
So I know that y'all have a massive company that does like Sandbridge and Outer Banks, but do you currently invest yourself, and how did that journey start for you?
Yeah. At first I was reluctant to do that, which is really, again, back to the opposite of Travis. I was on the management end, and I was thinking, well, if I buy properties, my other owners are going to be pissed at me because they're going to think book mine first, right? And so I was really, very, very reluctant to get into it. But my wife and I now have 4 properties. They're all here on the Outer Banks. We have 2 large oceanfronts and 2 smaller properties, and that's also been great advantage, I think, for me now, because I see it from both sides. I see it from a management standpoint, being a professional manager, and all the things we have to do to take care of the properties and get them cleaned and keep owners engaged on putting money back into the property. And then I find myself on the other side too. When that work order comes across, and I'm like, "What do you mean that the toilet is clogged? It was working 3 days ago." It's a crazy business.
Yeah. So I guess, you see like short-term rentals, most people are trying to figure out like, hey, should I go like more beds, more money, or like go on the smaller end? Because I've heard, I guess it must be the stat, I'm not sure if it's exactly correct, that most people that search Airbnb are like between 1 to 2 people. So should people still look at the high end because it might give a more return, or the low end?
Yeah, so I don't own any properties over $500,000, and the properties I manage are probably under that price point as well. I think so I don't have like a really good perspective into the larger properties. The largest property I have is a 4-bedroom, and it only sleeps 8, so that's like the maximum amount of any. I guess I have one property I manage for a friend's family that sleeps 10. I think in my past experience, what I've found is like the 6 to 10 people vacation is like the sweet spot for me in particular, where it's the family that has 4 kids, or you have 2 families that maybe both have a kid that want to go vacation. I think that there's nothing wrong with going higher end, more luxury, expensive properties that are $1 million or like 700, 800, 900,000. I also, on the flip side of that, though, think that those are potentially going to be the properties that if there is a recession or anything like that, they could be hit most, because less people, especially less larger groups, are going to be potentially taking less vacations. Whether or not that actually happens, I don't know. But I personally don't own or manage anything that sleeps over 10 people. So I don't have like a very good understanding of what that market looks like.
If I could get on the coattails there, your comment there about Airbnb, I think is spot on, because it's really market driven and it's also customer driven. And I do believe most of the Airbnb clientele is looking for more last. There are some long-term stays, in terms of booking now for June, but I think most of the Airbnb business I see is more shorter term and smaller. You guys are millennials, you know that it's mostly millennial driven. But the other platform we use, Vrbo, is almost exactly the opposite. They're looking for full houses. They're looking for family reunions. It's long-term booking versus arrival. And, in terms of which is the best, you really have to look at your own comfort level. I was just a little palpitation in my heart when you were talking about, I'm thinking about affordability. My wife and I just bought a large oceanfront. The mortgage on that thing's $8,000 a month.
Yeah, I knew it had to be bad.
Let's just tighten up a little bit on that. I can take the $1,000 mortgage pretty well. So 3 of our 4 properties are smaller, and they book like crazy. The larger one, and some of them are like, come on, give me another booking. I got it.
Yeah, that's a lot of overhead.
Some of the properties it's not unusual for us to have 250, 300. I've got one that had almost $500,000 in rental income last year.
Jeez.
I can't imagine a mortgage.
Because I know, so on Outer Banks, there are some massive, like, it looks like almost like hotel houses. Mm-hmm. So do y'all manage a couple of those? And I guess, like, who usually books that? Just large, like, weddings? I've probably seen some weddings do it.
Yeah, the wedding business, of course, slowed down a lot over the last 2 years, but yeah, we get those large family reunions. And then speaking of that booking window, those people don't make last-minute decisions on that. They're booking a year in advance, 9 months in advance.
Yeah.
Yes, we manage a few of those. I'd say about 20 large properties that sleep more than 25 people. I've got one that sleeps 40, and it's almost like a resort. It's got they all have their own swimming pools. They have theater rooms. They have
They have everything.
Everything.
It's like one of those like little cruises that they just put in made in the house.
Yeah, we just don't have foods.
What is it like, Tim? I'm curious because I've never managed anything of that size. What do you think is like some of the biggest differences in managing something of that size versus something that's a 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom that is pretty standard for like turning and pretty standard for like what issues pop up?
The cleaning fee.
That's so I think the first thing that comes to mind, Travis, is the number of people in the house and the wear and tear on the furniture. And the fact that, Tyler went in there, booked this house, and he's the leaseholder. Well, you've got this mother-in-law who calls every flipping day about some problem with the house. It's magnified in the 3. Yeah, and have one troublemaker. From the 640, you got, the aunt and the cousin who aren't on the lease, but they're still calling every day about something. And, it's just more to it. It's just so much more to it.
So I guess one of the big kind of shifted a little bit. One of the big questions everyone's trying to figure out because you hear on the social media like everyone's like scared like we're recession. I'm curious, Tim, because you've been in the game for like I think it was like 35 years, and then your family's done it before that. So you've been through a bunch of market cycles. So I'm curious what your thoughts are from like what's coming now, and like how did it look like back then?
Yeah, if this recession ever gets here,
yeah.
It's like it's coming. I'm telling you, people, it's good. But in terms of what to do, I think there's like a God-given right for people to take vacations, and so if you position yourself with a vacation rental in a market that's steady, which Travis is. In several markets, you told me the other day, you've got international travelers, you've got drive-to destinations, you've got fly-to destinations, so you kind of cover it all across the board. I am definitely a drive-to destination with the traditional family that comes every year. So my stuff's a little more immune to that. We may have to do some price differentials to make sure we get them booked, but as long as there is Americans, we're going to have demand for vacation rentals.
Yeah. Interesting. So, Travis, you're in multiple locations. Is that a lot harder? Because like I know Tim's is very like all in-house team. Yours is more like, hey, I gotta go build the team here. I gotta build the team here. I gotta build the team here. So how's that?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely more difficult the more markets you're in the sense of having to build the team, boots on the ground, and not being there. And also that team not being in-house. That team is a third-party vendor, really, supplier of cleaning services, handyman services, things of that nature. So I think it's definitely more difficult in the sense of the more markets that you spread out into. And if you're not large enough in those markets to be able to do exactly what Tim does, where you can have everything in-house, it makes it more challenging. But also on the flip side of that, what I would say is once you get your A team, once you get great cleaners, once you get great handymen on site, or like at whatever the area is, it makes it very streamlined to be able to add additional properties in that market. So I think it is difficult early on. But once you find the right people, from handymen and cleaners most specifically, like they're the most important people. But once you find great cleaners in the market, then it makes everything a lot easier. And scaling in that market becomes fairly straightforward because you have good boots on the ground.
Travis, don't you have to really work those relationships to make sure they answer your calls first?
Yeah, absolutely. It is interesting being in the hospitality industry and being on the side of the owner, or like acting as the owner, even if the property's not necessarily yours. Working those relationships. And what I say, the biggest thing, and it depends on who you're talking about, but the biggest thing is cleaners. You want to, as much as you can, you want to be screening the guests properly so they're not walking into a disaster every single time they're coming to your property. Because the more that happens, the more likely they are to potentially fire you and be like, hey, we don't want to deal with this anymore, and don't want to deal with the level of guests that you're bringing into your properties. So it's important to make sure that, one, you, as well as you can, you try to eliminate the possibility of bad guests being at your property to where they aren't treating it well and your cleaners are walking into a nightmare. And then you also, I think it's extremely important to make sure you immediately pay your cleaners whenever you get an invoice. Different cleaners operate different ways, but the less that a cleaner has to worry or follow up with you or things like that, and the more you can make it super easy for them to be able to handle your properties, the better you're going to set yourself up to keep those people and build those relationships.
We have a podcast, myself and Sarah Bradford, called Sarah and T, Professional Vacation Managers Podcast, and we have things called pull-over moments. That was one right there. If you guys are just halfway listening, rewind it about 45 seconds and listen to what Travis just said, because that is so key. They give you a bill on Wednesday, you pay it on Friday.
Yeah.
And that's how you build that loyalty in the market. And Tyler, I know you and I are in an area where we just had a cold snap about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Plumbers are walking around like, rappers right now. The gold chains, the rings, and whatever. It's like, if you call a plumber, I may be able to look at those broken pipes in 6 weeks. And when I come, I'm charging $300 an hour, right? And so getting those guys to go when you need them to go, that's how you do it, folks.
So okay, let's say you're going to a new market or you're trying to hire someone. So what key questions, or how can you go about finding the right people? Because that is if you're looking to invest in a certain market, you need to build your team because you live and die by your team. How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, I would say the first thing that I recommend doing, and what I've done, is tapped into my network to see if any other individuals have really good boots on the ground that they're willing to share contacts for. So that's always the first thing that I'm going to try to tap into. The majority of people will be open as long as their teams, cleaners, handymen have the ability to take on new properties. They will be open to sharing those contacts. The second way is honestly trial by fire with doing your screening, going through your process. I have a list of questions for cleaners anytime I go into a new market. If I don't have somebody that already operates there that I trust, that will give me their boots on the ground team that they trust, then I have my screening process for my cleaners of the questions that I ask them through trial and error, to try and get the best cleaner, to try and get the best handyman. Typically, what I see anytime I go into a new market, what I've experienced is I'll go through at least one cleaner. That's just going to happen. You may not get the best cleaner if it's not somebody that was recommended from somebody that already operates and has multiple rentals in that market. But I usually find that the screening process is kind of like screening guests. Like you're going to try to set yourself up for success, but you may not get the best cleaner on the first go around. So it's just something that you will get, and Tim knows this, you will get feedback from the guests if the cleaning isn't what it should be. So you will get that feedback fairly.
That's true.
So at the end of the day, what I usually use as kind of a rule of thumb is if I'm not getting feedback from guests on cleanliness, then the cleaner's doing a good job. But the second I get feedback, I just pass that feedback along to my cleaner. I don't point fingers. I just say, hey, here's some feedback from the previous guest. Not a big deal, but just wanted to let you know. Because you don't want to piss somebody off. You don't want to piss your cleaners off. They're the most important person on your team. But if that continues to happen, then that's when I start looking and exploring for new options.
What about finding good people, Tim? Because I know like hiring right now, even in house, is a disaster. So like, how do you find good people to bring on your team?
I think, first of all, we've already called this the TTT podcast with all of us T's on here, but it is quickly morphing into a theme on this podcast. That is good people. If you don't surround yourself with good people, you're not going to go very far, whether it's out of house, contractor type, or in house. And we could do a whole hour on this, but we have a culture here that we really defend and look for those key traits. And just as Travis was talking about his list of questions, we have a whole interview process. By the time someone comes to work for me full-time year-round, they've been through 7 rounds of interviews.
Oh, wow.
Through our 8-person who, the first interview is always on the phone, and they don't even realize they're being interviewed, because if you can't do good phone, you can't work for me.
Yeah.
You got to be able to communicate, sound strong and knowledgeable on the phone, whatever your job is. And then we have some personality tests we use. I shouldn't say test. My HR person always says it's an assessment. It's not a test. Well, it's a test. But, what kind of personality you're dealing with. Is this person going to fit? And then it comes to, they come in and we have what we call play day, where they come in and we pay them to just hang out and see if they fit in with people they're going to work with. And we've made some mistakes, don't get me wrong, but you can't emphasize this stuff enough. You hire slow, fire fast.
Yeah. I heard, so I've been reading the book, actually read the book like twice, it's Traction. They said your team needs to like believe in your core values. So what is each one of y'all's company's team values, and how do you hire based on that? I think Tim's saying
so
you can go first.
I'm a little bit different in the sense of my team is really all third party kind of people that I hire out for cleaning and handyman. So it's a little bit different and unique. But as far as core values, there's a couple different things that I think really stood out for me when I first started at Walmart. The first one is always striving for excellence, no matter what you do. The second is the customer's always number one. So this is kind of a Walmart tenet that we always had, where customer is always number one. And then the next is treating everybody with respect. No matter who it is, I don't care if you're the CEO of a company. I don't care if you're the person that is going in and cleaning. I don't care if you're a Karen guest that is a pain in the ass to deal with. I'm always going to treat everybody with respect, no matter who it is. So those are kind of some of the core tenets that I really think about. Even though I don't necessarily have people that that work for me, similar to like how Tim is set up and has a large team with all the properties that they're managing. But those are the kind of the core tenets that I have in the back of my mind.
That's great. I wrote those down. The listener wrote them down too. That's good. We have 3 values, and they come up very quickly in the interview process, and we have a variety of questions we ask to try to get to the bottom of it. Number 1 is integrity. You got to do the right thing, and I guess that goes back to the customers. Number 1, I would say my staff. Number 1, I want to make them so happy and so thrilled to work here that they're going to give great service all the time. So, certainly integrity is number 1. Professionalism, which I think also fits in the core value. We can talk about excellence, being professionalism. That's somebody else has to say that about you. That's the other thing you say about professionalism. You can't go around and go, I'm very professional. Look at me. You've got to walk the talk. And then our third core value is a little off, but it's while we're here, and that's profitability. Excuse me. The idea is I want to make more money next year than I made this year.
Yeah.
And everybody that's working with us wants to make the same. So we run our company as an open management company. a great book out there called The Great Game of Business by Jack Stack. Is the fellow's name. I encourage everybody to take a look at that. And when we started running our company as an open book management company, our profitability soared, and our happiness soared, and our growth soared. And basically, not to make this the longest answer in the world, but the open book management concept is that we have a budget. We have quarterly goals about how profitable we're going to be, and if we make those goals, every employee gets a cut of the profits. And we have weekly meetings, and we put the numbers right up on the board. This is what we were supposed to make. This is what we did make. This is what we were supposed to spend. This is what we have spent. And every single person has to buy into that, whether it's the maintenance guy not going to Ace Hardware 4 times a day and making sure his truck is stocked properly, or buying gas at the place that has gas 5 cents less a gallon. Those are critical to success. And we just obviously finished the fourth quarter, and all of them got a big check because we made our goal at the end of the year. And so that's key as well. Money does motivate.
Yeah. Actually, so how I actually found out about Tim, I actually went to see a short-term rental one time in the Outer Banks, and I met one of his agents, and one of his agents actually spoke very highly of you too. So that says a lot. And most agents don't really talk that highly about their brokerages either. So that says a lot. So. But I guess to kind of shift everything a little bit, I know now everything's changing so much with technology and software. What exactly are y'all using software-wise to help maximize your business?
Yeah, I would say I'm a big I am an industrial engineer by trade, so like my MO has always been to make things as efficient as possible, no matter what it is I'm doing, to try to, at the end of the day, save time. Because I got into real estate investing not to create another job for myself, but rather to create a source of monthly cash flow that would replace my W-2. And with that, automating as many processes, not only from an efficiency standpoint, but also to maximize profitability is what I've heavily focused on over the last 5 years. The main two things that I utilize in order to do that is pricelabs dynamic pricing tool, which I use for all of my properties that I self-manage, that I own, and that I teach people and kind of help them launch their first property. So pricelabs is a massive tool for pricing to maximize profitability that Tim was talking about earlier. And then from a messaging standpoint and automating a significant amount of the interactions that I have with guests, I use a software called Hospitable. So that's a great tool to automate a significant amount of the communication that goes back and forth with guests. That also helps me communicate new bookings with cleaners and things of that nature. Another thing that my cleaners use in a couple of markets to help them, and Tim, I don't, you guys have most of your stuff in-house, so you may not use this, but most of my cleaners use a website called Resort Cleaning. And Resort Cleaning, essentially owners can go in and sync their calendars to their portal or whatever, and then my cleaners are able to see when they have different bookings. So that's kind of the high level, that's kind of the tech stack that I currently use.
I've heard and know about all of those companies. They're really good. There's some options out there, particularly for the smaller investor that maybe listening to the podcast, maybe only has 1 or 2 properties. I have a whole tech stack, so I kind of go above and beyond that. I have to have a property management software. I manage 400 properties, so I've got to have it. I look at it right. I have my dashboards. I can look at all the calendars. I can see, what the booking pace looks like. I do have a dynamic pricing tool within that. The software I use is called Streamline. It's out there in Arizona, where you are right now, Travis. Those folks do a great job for me. But we have a number of other softwares that have to fit in the whole chain here. We have electronic locks, of course. So I've got software for that, and I can go and read the locks and tell you the last 1,000 people to open the door. We've got an operation software that goes back to the housekeeping function, whether it's a dry cleaner or an employee. They have an app and tells them where they need to clean and when they've been in the house and when they're finished, and I know it's ready for inspection and that sort of thing. It's also a communications device with the guests, as you mentioned. We've ramped up a couple other things on software this year as well. Just kind of subsidiaries, almost like the octopus. You got all these arms out here to try to get your hands around what's going on. We started using a software this year called Noiseaware, which has been really cool because you can't do it all the time, and it's a device that measures decibels. It doesn't measure volts.
Oh yeah, I've heard that.
But when the decibels get up to a certain level, there's something going on in that house. And it detects the guest the first 2 times, saying, hey, you need to pipe down. Most times that works. But the 3rd time, the property manager, a phone call, says you have a problem at, property 1, 2, 3. They're being too loud. And so we've had some interesting conversations there where people say, we're just playing cards.
Yeah.
But, looking at the data, back to the pricelabs, those guys are super smart. You got to have something that tells you what you're doing versus what the market's doing, no matter the size of your company. So kudos to you on that, Travis. That's good stuff.
So I know Airbnb, when you list with them, they have their own pricing. What's the difference profitability wise using Airbnb's software compared to like Pricelabs and I think what is it, Streamline?
Streamline's what I have. Okay. Yeah, my dynamic pricing is called RevMax.
RevMax, okay.
You want to take that first, Travis?
Yeah, so I don't know because I've never used it because it sucks, in my opinion. So I'm not. I don't know. Transparently, I have no idea if it's good or bad. All I know is that with PriceLabs, which is what I use, there's a lot of additional functionality on top of whatever Airbnb is showing smart pricing is, that you have the ability to do to further optimize and maximize total profit and gross income potential. So from my standpoint, I don't even touch or look at smart pricing, as they call it, because I would rather pay, I think I pay $15 a month or something like that per listing on PriceLabs to be able to generate 10, 15, 20% additional revenue. So I can't say like this is how much better it is because I just don't use it. So I'm not sure.
Yeah. I think what I heard you say and what I believe is that I just don't trust it.
Yeah.
That's yes.
It's telling me that. This is not real world, and that's what you got to do. You can't put it on automatic pilot. You got to check in every now and then. You can't be in the backseat of the Tesla, as they say. Your hands on the wheel, making sure. And so we've actually, with the software we have, we can make these groups. And so I'm certainly interested in what the competitors are doing. As I mentioned earlier, we track our competitors. I know where I am in the marketplace in any given area. But I'm also interested in where this house is versus other houses in my own program. And that creates demand as well because, quite frankly, 70% of my bookings are done on my website. And another 25% are done over the phone. OTAs, all of them combined, TripAdvisor, Airbnb, Vrbo, account for less than 10% of my business.
Oh, wow. Huh. So I guess the second thing you said, you're talking about the tech software. Do you, I guess, like pre-program responses based on certain things they say? Is that kind of how that works?
From that standpoint, you certainly can do that. And we do have some automated messages. We have an automated message that goes out like the night before checkout. It says, hey, just a reminder, please text the word checkout when you leave so we know you're gone. It also keys a message to the cleaner that says the house is now ready and it's dirty. We can put trash reminders out. Don't forget Thursday morning, those kinds of things. Or if there's a big event like in this area, hurricane evacuation, we can do that. But we do have 3 staff members who are pretty much on that from 8 a.m. till 9 p.m.
Interesting.
Directing, individually talking to people. We get a lot of work orders through the chat too, which is interesting. People who don't want to call anymore, they'll text you.
But so it's funny, we talk about like software and technology. I think like the future of AI is going crazy because I know this one wholesaler, he actually like AI's everything. Like if a person texts this response, he uses the AI, like what's your potential responses, and has like before he even like goes into the conversation, he's almost at the closing. So, and I was talking to Travis. I don't know if have you heard of Chat GPT, Tim?
You mentioned it to me the other day.
Yeah.
I'm really finding out a lot about it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, because I guess Travis mentioned on Instagram, he was like, what should I put on my Instagram bio? I was like, just put in the Chat GPT and tell exactly what to do, see what it does. So I think it's crazy. But so
I still think like that human interaction, though. People are out there listening to us or whatever. You can set up a lot of automated stuff or whatever, but I tend to find there's a little mistrust of the public about, am I really talking to somebody at this location, or am I talking to somebody in India right now? Or,
yeah, probably.
Property before, and so don't go overboard on this stuff. You still have to be able to, like I say, put your hands on the wheel.
Because they can do automated.
I think it's,
go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's really important, Tim, exactly what you're saying, to like a lot of people will want to talk to somebody and will have one-off questions or want to call you on the phone to ask questions or whatever, which you 100% need to be there for and make it a personalized experience. The other thing that I've found through the automation specifically to try to make it as personalized as possible is a lot of these softwares, especially for the messaging specifically, you always want to address somebody by their first name. And that helps them think, in even the automation helps them think that this is a personalized thing that like somebody like is reaching out. So I think for the automated stuff, I found you want to personalize messages to somebody's first name to try to make it personal. And then you will, like Tim was saying, have the people that want to get on the phone or text or whatever to understand that like, hey, I'm talking to somebody real.
Interesting. So we talked about software. I guess the next one big thing I always love doing is I feel like the process. Like I try to make everything like almost like crazy simple, like write absolutely every single process out. What is y'all's process, and how do y'all usually like take me through more or less a schedule, like setting up your Airbnb and scheduling your process? You just like write down every single process, or?
Yeah, Tim, I'm interested because of how many people you have in properties. I'm interested to hear this.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so I hired a director of operations a couple of years ago, and he has some real skills on this, the whole process thing. He used to manage like production plants of, plastics or tires or what, talk about process. You got to do it this way, and this is how you do it. And so we started this thing called Kaizen, which is constant improvement and so on. And we really dove in on some of these processes. And I tell you, I always talk about holding up the mirror, about, you talk about how great we are or whatever, but sometimes you hold up the mirror and go, man, we really suck at this. And so one was the whole reservations process. By the time the guest contacts us and whenever we're on the front end, until the time they get in the house, we have like 35 points of contact. Like, oh my God, we are wearing these poor people out. And so the only way we got through that, and quite frankly, the housekeeping functions and maintenance functions and how we do this and that, there's so much. When you get to a point where you're starting to grow, we call it tribal knowledge. We got to go see Miranda, she knows that. Or you got to go see Sarah, she knows that. But if Sarah got hit by the car, God knows what's going to happen to us because we don't know how to do this. And so we've really been on a journey, I guess I'd say, over the last year and a half to put these things in writing and have actual specific meetings where we get the key players in the room and we talk through, why are we doing this? Well, because we always have done that, and that's not the right answer. And so we've really worked hard on trying to get those processes. We're not where we need to be, but we're a lot better than where we were.
So what are one of the key things that you did that's helped, restructure and make everything a lot easier?
Well, I think back to the one I was mentioning about the reservation sales process. So someone expresses interest and we get the confirmation in the booking and we take payment. And then what happens? We were touching base with them way too many times. They know the balance was due at a certain time. We didn't need to warn them 4 times in advance. We send out a message now when it's due. So we cut that 35 down to about 15. And then once they paid in full, we're reminding them they can do this, that, or the other. Well, we get to be irritating after a while. And no, they're not going to take trip interruption insurance. Just stop trying to sell it. No, they don't want extra towels. No, they don't want a mid-stay clean. No, they don't want, the vacay gear or whatever we're going to try to sell them. So trying to give a little more credibility or credit to the guest and their choices. We're here, we can sell these other things to you, but we're not going to remind you 14 times between now and check-in. So that's one of the things that comes to mind.
Yeah, I've seen that also because I've seen like a lot of people even complain about Airbnb in general. It's like they see the pricing, but then they click it and they see like all these different charges and they end up paying like 3x to what they originally thought they were going to do. Like it was like clickbait just to get them in there.
Mm-hmm.
So, but what about you, Travis?
Yeah, Tim's speaking my language because as an industrial engineer, Kaizen, Six Sigma, continuous improvement, the 5 whys, like keep on asking why until you really figure out like what's going on.
Yeah.
All of those are like, I mean, that's what I did in my previous roles and like in Walmart. Like I was the continuous improvement guy of how do we make things more efficient? How do we go in and like be self-reflective of like why are we doing this process the way that we are? Is it just because it's easier to do it that way? Should this be the new gold standard? Why are we having all these touch points? So I think from a process standpoint, when I go through and if I'm setting up a new listing, I have my document, I call it SOP. I have my standard operating procedure of when I go set up a property, what are the things that I do? How do I make sure that I check off all the Airbnb items when I'm uploading pictures, adding descriptions, making sure there's a cleaning fee. I have all those things documented. And then on top of that, then it's okay, the next step in setting up a listing on that document is now I set up the automation integrations. So I have for my automated messaging, I have these 7 message sequences that need to be set up for this property. In those, I also have the Wi-Fi information. So like I have the online guidebook link that needs to be created for that and dropped into this message. I have the Wi-Fi information that's unique to this property that needs to be dropped in and put for that particular listing. So I essentially just have an SOP that walks through the Airbnb setup, the automation messaging setup, and then the pricing automation setup. So it's essentially just a checklist that I go through for all the properties as I bring them on.
So I know like even like when you do long-term rentals, like you want to take a picture of absolutely everything before, because that's going to bring into our next topic issues. Is that something y'all do? You make sure like, hey, I got to take a picture of every square foot of this. And I mean, at Tim and some of those houses and I guess complexes almost married. That's a lot of photos.
Yeah. I can't let it pass here. We're talking about the 5 whys. So we have a refund form when we are going to give back money to either an owner or a guest because we screwed up. At the bottom of the form is the 5 whys. So, I'm looking at one right now on my screen. So that's so good. And one of the other things we have that Travis is explaining in another way, we call it the standard property appearance. And it is a document, and this is the way the welcome bag is supposed to look, and this is the way the towels are rolled. And with that operations app I was telling you about with the housekeeping, and then we don't call them directors because we need to be PC. We call them quality control agents. I guess, inspections like, I'm going to get you. Making sure we got what we're supposed to. And depending on the size of the house, but I mean, I do one of the QC inspections on my own property, and there's 87 things I need to check.
Oh, wow.
It's right in the app. Is the refrigerator looking nice? Is the dishwasher empty and clean? Are the towels put out properly? Is the thermostat set on cool and 72? All those kinds of things. Take a picture of the grill. Make sure that you don't have hamburger left on there. That's all critical, and it's all about first impression of the guests that they make within a couple of minutes of arrival. And if they find cheeseburger on the grill, that means that something else is wrong. I'm going to find that too, and you're going to hear from me, by God,
I got you.
Yeah, that's impressive.
But,
that's probably like I think that Tim. I mean, it's got to be crazy all the SOPs that you guys have because you do own the process end to end. Because like what Tim was just talking about with all of that checklist of 80 something items that for a property. That's what I just naturally expect my cleaner to have. Like, I'm not going to provide that information for them, so it makes my job easier. But Tim owning that process end to end, that's a lot of it's a lot of additional work that it takes to create those up front, but then you get a tremendous amount of benefit on the back end.
Sure do. You can sure tell. Hey, in the picture of the TV last week, it was in perfect order, and this week it's off the hinges and on the floor. Something happened while the guest was there, and it was like that all they want. Well, I got a picture right here, so it wasn't. So.
Jeez. So I guess Tim mentioned earlier, he talked about the noise things that can obviously come from the next question would be issues. So I know even liability issues. I've seen because I live next to the Outer Banks. I've seen people jump from the back deck, jump and lift off into the pool. So I was like, I don't know if Tim manages this, but I was like, man, that's good. That's almost a massive liability that he gets hurt. So how do y'all protect yourselves for the big issues, and what issues have you seen in both of you? Because I know Tim's in Outer Banks, and Travis, you have a lot of the Smoky Mountains. I'm not sure if there's a lot of kind of partying and that aspect, but
yeah, I think you have to. There's a couple ways that you protect yourself. One is just generic insurance that you get, and that's a little bit different for short-term rentals than long-term, and you pay a premium for short-term rental insurance. The second is covered by Airbnb, at least where I list my properties with air cover. So they have the $3 million. I think they bumped it from $1 million to $3 million policy that you fall under when you rent through them. Now, knock on wood, I haven't had to go through any major drastic claims process or major injuries or anything like that. It can happen, and I'm sure it will happen at some point. Whether or not air cover, you'll want to have your own insurance on the side so that in case air cover or whatever you aren't able to go through that process, you are protected. And then the other thing, just generally speaking, that you have control over to a small degree is just having a very good screening process for going through and trying to weed out any of those bad potential guests that may get into a property. You're not always going to be able to weed them out through the screening process, but if you have a very good set of questions that you go through and ask each guest to understand as much as you can about who they are, who's coming to the property, what they're coming to the area for, you can really try to screen out some potentially bad behavior guests.
Yeah. There's another software out there I've become familiar with recently called Guest Ranger that will take a cell phone number and be able to tie it to a person and verify identity and so on. That's pretty slick stuff. And if you have a larger company like that. But back to your question, Tyler, I see it in two ways. One, as a property owner, if you're out there renting it yourself, you need to make sure you got coverage on that liability insurance, which would cover you on anything that was not a willful misconduct where you knew that the railing was loose and it collapsed and somebody fell. But if it was an accident, you're going to be covered. And unfortunately, I have had incidences of that. And then from my standpoint of an operator, I actually have this, for lack of a better word, I guess if those in the real estate business out there, errors and omissions insurance, because my liability insurance only covers my building. It doesn't cover my 400 office locations, if you will. If we did something wrong at that house, it's not going to, my liability insurance isn't going to cover it. Now, I have in my contract that my owner's liability insurance will cover me, but I also have this professional liability or errors and omissions kind of a thing. And it's very expensive, but it is worth it because I can tell you I have been sued 3 times for major injuries at a property and 2 deaths as well, by the way.
Oh, wow.
And so despite the gut-wrenching part of that, the reality is, that you just need to have your eyes wide open and make sure your partners, your property owners, whoever, understand this is a business.
Yeah.
And you better treat it as such. And the fact is, somebody in Pennsylvania may sue you for the value of your property, and you better be ready.
So what was that like? Obviously, so you getting sued, what was the steps and how did that all look like, and how did you, I guess you deal with that?
Well, I can tell you one that's in my history. I've got one active I can't really comment on, and it involves the death of a child in a swimming
Oh,
pool.
wow.
But the one that I did go through was an elevator in a property that mechanically collapsed with some elderly people on board, and
Oh,
they
my
were
goodness.
injured. And so I was deposed. It was 7 hours, 5 attorneys firing questions at me, and I had to provide them every record we had relative to maintenance of that property. And so you just have to be so careful. It really, the sphincter muscles, sort of like that mortgage I was talking about, that tightens you up. This really tightens you up going, God, did he really write that in the work order? Oh, my God. Like fixed elevator. And the attorney for the elevator manufacturer who flew in from Germany says, can you tell me what Mr. Smith's qualifications are to fix an elevator? Did he go to, Preußen University in Germany?
Yeah.
No. We just went hit the button, but you got to be so careful with this stuff. And it takes a long time, and it's usually a federal lawsuit because the person's typically not in the same state. And so if they're in Pennsylvania, they're going to want you to go to Pennsylvania and defend yourself. And that's where insurance comes in and helps you on these kinds of things. The insurance company pays for the attorneys, they pay for everything. Doesn't mean, just because you don't think you're at fault doesn't mean you can't be sued.
So I guess when you got sued and you had to get the insurance involved, did you ever have an issue having the insurance pay out what your policy and coverage was?
On the one I just mentioned about the elevator, I never knew what the settlement was, but there was a settlement, and the insurance company basically brokered a deal. And I don't know, because we had, like I said, we had 5 attorneys in the room. We had my attorney, we had the property owner's attorney, we had the attorney for the victims, we had the attorney for the local elevator company that serviced it, and we had the attorney for the elevator manufacturer from Germany in the room.
Jeez.
So all of those people got together with the insurance company, and they settled. And I was never told what it was. I was just told you can shred the file.
Yeah.
And I did it immediately.
So what did you okay, that horrible situation happened. How did you, I guess, take that situation and how to try to make it not happen again? Like what did you do to
Yeah, well, I can tell you, don't touch elevators.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And then now there's actually a law in North Carolina called Weston's Law. I'm not sure if you guys read, there's a child that was crushed by an elevator last year up in Corolla. And the state law, that there's this gap on a lot of the home elevators, 4 or 5 inches wide, and you have to have that gap closed up. And so I've just made a lot of rule. We are not touching elevators. We are not doing anything with elevators. And the law says that if that gap is there, we have to not advertise it and shut the power off. And so if there's ever an issue with any elevator, we call the local elevator manufacturer or service company, who's the one that serviced the elevator and probably installed the elevator, and they go and handle whatever it is, even if it's the door not closing properly. It's over my pay grade. We just don't do it anymore.
So do you still manage properties that have elevators in it?
28 of them. Yes, sir.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So, and they all needed to provide me certificates that they were inspected and they're working properly, or I'm not advertising the elevator. So that law helped me in that regard, because I'm not the bad guy in this. I'm sorry, the state passed this law. You don't do this, but that safety thing, whatever it is, whether it's the deck railing or a step that's not just right, or elevators, a big one, or even a swimming pool, making sure the gates close properly, all that stuff. It's serious stuff. You can't think that it's not going to happen to you.
Yeah. Hey, well, Travis's take earlier about staying below 3 bedrooms, baths under 300,000 looks really good right now. But wow, that's intense. But so what is your process usually like for when both of y'all handling issues, because they always come up? So how do y'all usually go about handling the issues? What's your process for that?
Yeah, so the first thing I always do anytime an issue is brought to my attention is I want to understand specifically what's the severity of it. So is this something that I need to get somebody out immediately to, is it a safety concern that I need to get somebody out immediately to the property? Is it something that maybe is a issue but doesn't need to immediately be addressed and can be addressed the following day? And then depending on the severity and level of the issue, that's when I start getting on the phone and calling because I'm in Phoenix. I'm not going to be going to the property specifically, so I'm getting on the phone and then calling whoever it might be, whether it's cleaners if they can go fix a problem, or if it's a handyman, plumber, whatever it might be to get somebody out there. So I'm always evaluating first what's the severity of the issue, and is this something that I need to immediately address, or is this something that I can wait to have somebody go out the following day and kind of let them know that.
So Travis, let me ask you, what was the worst issue that you've had, like tenant with yourself interaction? Like, what was the worst scenario for you with issues?
Yeah, the craziest scenario that I've ever had happen is the cops showing up at one of my properties. And what ended up happening was I had a lady who was staying at one of my properties, and she had just broken up with her boyfriend or husband. I don't remember exactly. And she was from Indiana or something like that. She came down to Orlando because she wanted to get away. And somehow her boyfriend found out, her husband, ex-husband found out where she was, that she was at my property. And he was trying to break into the property while she was there. And she called the cops. The cops showed up. She then called me from her phone got into the pool somehow. So she had her Apple Watch. She called me from her Apple Watch and said, "I need you to call the cops." I'm like, "Why are you calling me? Like, you're the one that needs to call the cops. Like, I want you to be safe, but I'm not going to be able to help you out or do anything." So I asked her to call the cops. She then went to the front. So this property it's a resort community. So there's a front desk and like a big area. She then went there. I called the front desk and said, "Hey, can you guys let me know what's going on? Cause like, I'm not there." And they let me know, "Hey, at the end of the day, it's between her and the cops. Like, the cops need to figure out the situation and whatnot." And luckily she was safe and like, she didn't get hurt and anything like that, which is all I really cared about. There was some damage at the property that I fixed. Like, it is what it is. That's like what I was more focused on, and what I cared more about was that she was safe and nothing happened to her, and that she was able to leave the property and feel safe. But that's probably the craziest story that I've had at one of my properties.
That had to be pretty stressful.
This also happened on my first short-term rental property 3 months into owning the property. So it was oh, well, hopefully this isn't normal.
I can't touch that. It's pretty good. Ours is more run of the mill. So we actually have a department in the flow. We call it a material issue. If it's a material issue that's going to impact a guest stay, we want to be there within 4 hours and try to solve it. And we have we call him the guest experience manager, who's our frontline contact with the guests. Usually it's involving a refund of some sort. They're looking for compensation. And so we've actually created a spreadsheet that says, okay, hot tub out for a day, that's worth $32. Or the pool is out for a week, that's worth $400. Those kinds of things. When stuff happens, you'll have to not hide from it and make sure you make it right with the guests, because they spend a lot of money. They have high expectations.
Yeah.
So yeah, we tried to.
Do y'all draw a line? Because I feel like, I guess the growing trend nowadays is like, most people are like, they're never happy about anything. You just find people that they complain about absolutely everything. It's like, what do you want me to do? Like, there's nothing I could do.
Well, I think that's where technology really helps us.
Yeah.
Because that's one of our automated messages is the day after they arrive, we send the message saying, "How was your first night? Everything good?" And most people say, "Oh, it's fantastic," or this, or maybe they do say, "Oh, one of the bathrooms wasn't just right." Okay, we'll just send somebody there right away, take care of those.
Yeah.
But those people you're talking about, Tyler, are usually the ones we never heard from, and they tell you when they get home that they're going to reverse the credit card or whatever. And, so we've been to roll up the sleeves and Fuck up and say, no, I'm sorry. You never said a word. You didn't give us an opportunity to solve it, and so you're not getting anything.
So, for instance, like I know y'all are like short term, less than 7 days. So let's say someone books your house. I know I don't, and I'm not sure if it's that. You know, like people like squatting and take advantage, not trying to get out. Is I guess a growing trend. I guess. So has that ever happened? And what would you do if that actually happened? Like the person just would not leave the house.
Yeah, knock on wood, that doesn't happen ever. It hasn't happened at any of my properties, but at the end of the day, if it happens, for me, because I do all my bookings through Airbnb, the first step is always to contact Airbnb. The second step is to contact the cops to get them over there to try to dismiss the person from the property. I mean, that's really all you can do. Knock on wood again, I've never had it happen. Hopefully it doesn't ever happen. I'm sure it will happen at some point. But that's what I would do.
Yeah, now that Tyler's brought it up, it'll probably happen, right? And like you, Travis, I had to deal with that. I've had to deal with that I've had to evict during the process, and I do have some legal avenues called an expedited eviction process where I can get somebody out of the property within like 12 hours. So yeah, knock on wood, we don't have holdover squatters, thank God.
So Tim, we've talked before. You actually get someone to sign a separate lease when they book your property. Like you have the Airbnb site, but you send them a separate lease. What is that lease like, and why exactly do you use that?
Yeah, well, in North Carolina and Virginia, they're real estate states. So any short-term rental should have a lease agreement that outlines the responsibilities of the landlord and the responsibilities of the tenant. And so I think we have 24 clauses in at least now, and everyone has a story. So I could say everyone.
Because of exactly what you said, Tim. Because it's always everyone was a story. Like everyone, we added this because this happened.
Yes, exactly.
That's funny.
It's been a godsend for me. You know, you signed this lease and said that you were not going to have you weren't going to be having a bonfire on the back porch or whatever.
Yeah. That probably also helps with your screening process, because if they're not willing to sign that, that's like might be a big red flag also.
Right. We had several attorneys rent from us, and they've sent the lease back marked up with red pen and all this. I'm sorry. We're just talking to you.
They know more than us.
Yeah, always.
But Travis, what about you? Do you get them to sign a separate lease, or do you stick with?
No, I stick with everything just through Airbnb. For me, I think it's very smart for everything that Tim's doing, especially at their scale and everything that they deal with dealing with stuff off platforms where a lot of it's direct booking. For me, because it's all booking through OTAs, I essentially am utilizing the rules that Airbnb has for guests, for hosts, and setting up my listing, which additionally state things that I request of the guest and what their experience is going to be like. So I don't have anything that's outside of what Airbnb does. It would probably be smart to do, but it's not something I currently do.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I guess my issues compared, because I have a property up in the Blue Ridge Parkway that we run as a short-term rental, and honestly, the worst thing I've happened is pretty bad. All I've had people steal pillows. That's literally all. That's my only. I had one time someone steal pillows. I didn't understand it, but I was like, it's not even that big a deal. But compared to y'all's, I'm feeling really grateful right now.
You should.
But I guess where y'all see y'all's business like vision going forward. I know Tim, that you've taken over from your father's business. Where do you want to take Outer Banks and Sandbridge Blue in the future? And also Travis, I know you've been in it for 6 years and you started like at 1,000 monthly rate. Now you're at 500 something thousand and going to be a professional golfer next Tiger Woods. Where's your y'all's journey and vision for y'all's companies?
Yeah, not to correct you, I did work for my family's firm, but I left them years ago. They sold controlling interest to somebody else, so I had to go out and start my own deal.
There you
so
go.
I'm 100% owner of both my businesses. I think the best way to answer it is I run my company as though I'm going to sell it tomorrow, but I also run it as though I'm never going to sell it.
Yeah, I got you. That's good.
That's kind of what I am. I have looked at other locations maybe to open up because I have this model that's worked in 2 locations, and I've looked at other areas, and for whatever reason I haven't pulled the trigger on those. Where I've looked at like buying another company that's existing and bringing out people and kind of a thing. But I enjoy what I do. I don't see myself retiring anytime soon. But if I did, it would be probably passing it along to the employees of the company, where they would be the owners of the company. So that's kind of how I look at it. But we've reached our goals on numbers of properties and quality assurance and so on. So we're in a very good place.
That's awesome. For me, it's just continuing to look at growing my personal portfolio of properties that I own when the time's right. Personally, I'm not looking to buy anything right now, just with the market and interest rates. But what I am looking to do currently is continuing to grow my management side of the business in markets I'm already in, where I do have trusted team members and I am very familiar with the markets themselves. So when the time's right, I'll be looking to continue to buy properties as my own. And then in the meantime, I'm looking to continue to expand management in areas and markets that I'm already in, that I personally own properties in.
What markets are you in again? I know you're in the Smoky Mountains, but in Florida. Where else are you at?
Yeah, Smokies in Orlando, or Kissimmee, Davenport in Orlando, Panama City Beach are the areas that I'm in. And I guess I have a mentee out here. I have a mentee in Houston, and then I have a mentee in Phoenix as well.
Okay. What made you get into the property management side, even though that you were doing so good as now you're actually help solving other people's problems?
Yeah, so the property management side is an interesting story. So when COVID hit, I all of a sudden travel for work for me stopped. So I was traveling pretty much 100% of the time. So I was never home. I was house hacking. I had my first short-term rental property that I owned in Orlando. And when COVID hit, I was golfing with a friend of mine who brought another friend along, and his family owned a short-term rental property in Panama City Beach. And we got to talking, we were meeting each other. I was kind of telling them, hey, this is like what I do. And it's all about like talking about what you do to other people and like having an interesting background and story. And essentially what he asked was, hey, we're really unhappy with our property manager. They had Vacasa or something like that, managing one of the big players. And he's like, hey, we're really unhappy with them. We have all these issues, whatever. And because I stopped traveling for work and COVID hit, I was like, well, do you mind if I like go take a look at the property? It's a 4.5-hour, 5-hour drive from me in Orlando. And I ended up, they said, yeah, absolutely. Like if this is something you would potentially want to do, could you go out and take a look at it? So I drove out, stayed at the property for a week, and said, yeah, I think I could do this. And essentially put together a legal contract for me to take over management. And that's how I started managing and started my property management business. So it really, it was on accident, and it was because of the times. Like it was because COVID and I stopped traveling, and I could work from their place and go there and get it ready. And then once I had all my processes and systems down, then it's been really easy to scale in new markets once I have my team boots on the ground. So PCB is not a market that I own in, but it just happened to be the first market I started my property management business in, just because of that relationship and individual that I met.
So is that something you plan on growing, like expanding the property management side of the business? Like, do you want to expand everywhere except for Outer Banks? Like...
It'll only be expanded in markets that I'm already in. So like we talked about a little bit earlier, the hardest thing to do is to find good boots on the ground, quality people that you trust and you have good relationships with. So I feel very confident that I have that in every market that I am in. So I am only looking to expand management, property management in markets that I personally own and already operate in, just because it's not worth it for me from a time investment standpoint to take on and stretch myself super thin, where now I'm communicating with 10 different cleaners, 10 different handymen, 10 different plumbers, and all that kind of stuff. It just stretches you too thin if you expand to that level, in my opinion.
Okay. Well, by the way, I haven't said it on live. Congratulations on officially retiring. I know you just retired from your W-2 job. I think, was it like last month?
Yeah, 3 weeks ago. Officially full-time, just real estate. Yeah. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and you have to change your Instagram name because now you're retired by 30, not 33.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see.
So, hey, Tim, I actually didn't know that you started your own like company. How did that go from starting that from scratch? Because I mean, did your dad say, why didn't you just buy my company? Or
Yeah, well, it was my dad passed, so my mom was running it, and she wanted an exit strategy, so she actually sold controlling interest. But I went to work for a competitor.
Yeah.
Is what I did. I went and talked to the guy who was the controlling interest of the family company, and said, if you tell me the ownership is coming, I won't leave. And he stood up, reached across the table, said, congratulations, I wish you the best of luck. So with that, I was unemployed. I went to work for a competitor, and I knew I wanted to own my own deal. And so I was putting half of my paycheck away for 5 years. And got a nest egg to start the company, and that's kind of history. Out of the chute with 125 properties within 45 days. And
oh, wow.
17 years old.
So how was that? Because I know everything's all automated now. You have a huge team. Everything's in house. How did you start from scratch? Like, did you have to start off kind of like how Travis did, like all subcontractors, or like how did that process work?
Yeah, I had a lot of subcontractors. I eventually hired one maintenance guy, and then it was two, and it's 28 vehicles on the road now. But the first time it was working the phones and the relationships, and back to the core values. Integrity has always been a really big deal to me, and so we called some of these property owners and said, "Hey, I got this new company. I'd love for you to take a chance on me." A lot of them had experience with me, with either my first company or with the other company I worked with, and they got on board. And actually, I still have some of those properties still today. So, it matters how you conduct business. There's just no doubt about it, and it's paid off for me many, many times.
Yeah, because I love the book Traction, because I feel like it's like the blueprint for like growing and scaling business. What was like kind of replacing yourself? Like, what was your first couple hires? You had, guess you had the maintenance person, you had a cleaner, and then how did you go about stepping outside of actually being the property manager for every single property?
Yeah, I'm not sure we had a blueprint. We had a card table and a cordless phone and a printer and a computer. I knew I needed to add inventory because that's the thing. He has the houses, controls the market. And so we actually went out there and started recruiting first, and then we brought a reservations agent in, and then the marketing person in, and just slowly built. I think our first year we had a Christmas party with 4 of us. And this past year we had a Christmas party with 120 of us. So it's the same process though. Those first couple of people I hired went through the same thing I'm talking about now.
Yeah.
And some of those folks are still around.
So what would be your best piece of advice for someone wanting to start from scratch like that? Like, how would they, like, what would be your best piece of advice for them growing and scaling like that?
I would say a business plan, kind of what you're alluding to there. Have your goals, but without a plan, it's a wish. Yeah. So they were early in the podcast. And so one of the things I did early on was I went to the Chamber of Commerce, and they have this organization called SCORE, which is the retired business people or whatever. And I hooked up with this fella and sat down and had breakfast with me. It was no charge, and he took interest in me, and he said, I'm not going to talk to you again until you come back to me with a proposed budget. What are you going to spend? What are you going to make? How are you going to make it? And that was changing.
I gotcha. So, for speaking of, because I like Traction so much, do you keep like a scorecard or anything to like make it where you can keep track of everything and helps you meet your goals?
Yeah. Traction. Okay. My screen. Everybody has a score. Housekeeping, maintenance, marketing. Everybody has a score.
But I'm not sure what y'all's time schedule is for today. Is there a time y'all need to?
I do need to jump.
Okay.
Sorry.
But you still there, Travis? Okay. I'm not sure what your schedule is, but we can go ahead and wrap this up. I guess the last piece of advice that you would give to people just starting out in investing, property management, or just trying to create a business in itself. Okay. What about you, Tim? Last piece of advice that you would give people?
Well, I'd say, again, just start slow. Have goals in mind. Make sure you have a war chest, too. I mean, Travis just said he didn't cut the strings until recently when he was going pretty well. So you got to have that money to fall back on. You still got to operate. It always costs more than you think it's going to. And just be true to yourself. Don't give up the dream. Just so a friend of mine told me, he said, Tim, you're really not committed to the process until you have to decide whether you're going to put payroll on your Visa card. So I was committed. I did put payroll on Visa and we got through it and we're doing pretty well.
There you go. Mine would be not give up because, I mean, Travis just started out like first in the Airbnb, had the cops call. He's like, man, he could have easily been like, maybe this isn't for me. So it's just, I guess, continuing after and keep going. So I appreciate y'all coming on and look forward to see what y'all do and just have a good rest of the day. And I appreciate y'all's time.
Same to you. I learned something. That's always good.
Always.
Appreciate it, guys.